there's a video out here I want to recommend to people, this demographic winter. If this doesn't scare the devil out of you, I don't know what would, because this shows what's happening. And Nancy Pelosi is a pathological liar. Babies are not the problem. Fewer babies are being born today than were being born 100 years ago. The problem is, if you want to look at it from a demographic standpoint, and I talked about this one time before, and I said, look, if we're going to try to kill people or reduce the number of people, why do we keep doing things to make people live longer? Why not just chop off all research that would cause people to live longer? And this demographic winter makes the point that that's really the problem. That the problem is we went from, in 1900, the average person lived to be like 46 years old, and by 2000, it was 74. And the problem is we have this aging population all over the world and not enough babies to come along to take care of them.
With the introduction of birth control, you have more people at the top end of that scale than you have down at the bottom. In other words, the people on the bottom, the younger people who are working to support the older people, are fewer than they ever have been.
And getting smaller.
Any point in history.
Right.
You know, when I tell people if they want to become pro-life, there's two things they need to do. One, watch Demographic Winter, and two, read the book by Mark Stein, America Alone.
Right.
That's enough pro-life information you need.
I started hearing about this some time ago when there was this economist, I think he's actually a Russian, who was predicting and he's a statistician, what do you call the people that deal with demographer. He predicted this like 20 years ago. He said the American economy would boom until sometime between 2008 and 2010. And then the American economy would collapse.
And what happened during that time?
In 2008, 2010, the American economy collapsed.
The baby boomers started retiring.
That's what he was talking about.
They stop producing and they start retiring.
And they start consuming.
And
I've done this. We've talked about this on LifeTalk before. There's a biblical thing going on here. It's very biblical. You reap what you sow. The baby boomers did not legalize abortion. People our age did not legalize abortion. It was basically the World War II generation. They were the people on the Supreme Court that legalized abortion. But it was baby boomers who used it. The baby boomer generation has killed 50 million of the next generation because they were inconvenient, expensive, and unhealthy. Now, that generation is supposed to be taking care of us, and we're getting to the point where they're going to be looking at us and saying, you're inconvenient, unhealthy, and too expensive. You reap what you sow.
Yeah, and not only that, if you reap what you sow, that means if you didn't sow something, you ain't going to get nothing.
Right. And if you watch this demographic winter, I don't know, have you seen it, Johnny?
I've seen it. In fact, Pastor Broden sat down in the office. This is so good that a pastor can actually just put it on his laptop and show it.
Right.
But we would recommend you need to show it to a whole bunch of people. Right. And we sat there right there in the office and watched that thing. I was shocked.
And all these people are saying that the problem is babies.
Yeah. Right.
The problem is not babies. Yeah. The problem is too few babies.
Few children.
And our economy now is collapsing. And it's like Troy was saying a minute ago. Baby boomers now are crossing over. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the numbers are staggering. Baby boomers retire at the rate of 10,000 a day for the next 18 years. Right. 10,000 a day.
And on that thing, you'll really see, when they start talking about Europe, and when you're there, when you've really been in Germany and other countries, you actually do see this.
Well, they're talking about ghost towns. They show pictures of ghost towns in Europe that were thriving communities just a generation ago, a few years ago, because they just don't have any people. They didn't replace their population.
That's why the best thing that can happen for our society is we have some more children. What happens when you have a baby? All of a sudden, you spur on the economy. Not only do you buy diapers and baby clothes, but then you go buy a camera and you have those pictures developed, and then you go out and buy a car seat and you buy a minivan, and then you go to Disneyland, you take family vacations, and you go show your children to your parents.
And you have more kids and you do it all over again.
It's great. Mm-hmm. I've got 5 children. It's the best thing I've ever done.
One of these things is, the United States population, everybody says, we got too many people. The United States population has gone down over the last generation if you take out immigration.
Immigration is the big thing.
And Europe is having this same problem. These countries now are saying, they're actually putting out projections of how many people they're going to have immigrate from other countries to keep their economy going. Right. And one thing I had never thought about until I watched this demographic winter is they've done the history of, they've done this research looking at the whole history of the world. They say in the history of the world, there has never been a country with a growing economy and a shrinking population, that the two don't go together. And we all kind of intuitively know this. For example, when people come to Dallas-Fort Worth right now, it's like, Troy, you just mentioned a second off air. Everything's under construction. The place is just...
It's booming.
It's booming. And 150,000 people a year are moving to North Texas. Just to North Texas, not all of Texas, just Dallas-Fort Worth, Denton metropolitan area. If you come here, you see that as a sign of a healthy economy, right?
Yes.
Right, that more people are coming. Well, then why do we then say, well, the solution to having a healthy economy is to have fewer people? Where does that come from? But if you were then to go to another part of the United States and you see a bunch of boarded up buildings and you see every third house for sale, your first thought is, well, they're losing population. This place must be going into the tank, right?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of Midwest states are doing just that. There are cities in Kansas that are literally ghost towns.
Right.
People have left the state altogether.
It's amazing. And the numbers that the government is saying, I saw somewhere here, I'd written down some of the stuff. Well, for example, in Spain is now saying, the Spanish government is now saying, they will need an additional 2 million foreign workers just to maintain their current economy.
I think it's Spain, Japan, France, and Italy have a replacement rate of 1.1 children per couple. Now, what happens is every successive generation is halving one another. If you have two, you create one.
Right.
And then and two more, you create one. You're halving each generation. And here's an interesting thought that's proposed by Mark Stein in his book. Italy, home of we would think historically as of these large families. In the next generation, they're going to have to remove the word aunt and uncle from their language because there won't be any aunts and uncles.
They're all having one child.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
No brothers or sisters.
It's unbelievable. The demographics are scary. And now, what's his name? The Obama's preacher up in Wright says the chicken's coming home to roost. Well, you know what? These chickens are coming home to roost.
You reap what you sow.
Here's the chickens that are coming home to roost. And you think that the reason that the housing market, like this guy predicted, he predicted 20 years ago, between 2008, 2010, the American economy is going to collapse because it's based on two things: car sales, home sales. Those are the two things that drive the American economy.
Consumer sales, TVs, and stuff.
Well, yeah,
like
but
that.
these are the big ones because they're the high-ticket things.
Look who wants bailouts.
And what's tanking right now? Car sales and house sales, because you don't have the baby boomers are saying, I've had all the fancy cars. I don't have to have a new car every 3 years. I can just get by with what I've got. I'm fine with this car in my old age. I don't need a new house. I can live in this house. I'll just get this one paid for, maybe even downsize, get a smaller house. Right. There's nobody coming along who's saying, okay, now I'm getting into the market. I want to buy houses. Because the problem is, and I've said this many times before, when you look at the immigration issue, people say, well, these immigrants that are coming here, so let's say, just use the Mexican people for an example. They're coming here taking jobs that Americans don't want. We can make that argument or not make that argument. There's arguments on both sides. I don't believe that. What I believe is that these Hispanic workers are coming here and taking the jobs of the Americans who don't even exist.
Yes.
We've killed 50 million people that would have been here.
There's no doubt about it. And what's happening in Europe is, at least the Hispanics that are coming to America have the same worldview as us. In other words, they're Christians. Right. What's happening in Europe is people are coming from Muslim countries. And that's why, these so-called youth riots that are happening in France, they're not youth riots. Right. They're Muslim riots.
Yeah. I saw something the other day. It's not in this demographic winter movie, but it's very interesting you bring that up. There's always this little thing that goes around, what's the most common name? And they change from generation to generation.
Right.
Mark, John. When I was a kid, Mark was the most common name. Debbie. Nowadays it's things like Jason and Tiffany and, Jennifer and, In England, right now, the number one most common name is Muhammad. Wow. That's the number one name for babies.
Not just England, but all of Europe.
Well, I just saw this thing in England.
Right.
But they're saying the number one name given to newborn babies in England is Muhammad.
Mm-hmm. And even when we talk about 50 million babies here, we really lost more than that because they didn't have their children.
They didn't have babies. Mm-hmm. Well, see, I think, Johnny, you've hit on what the problem is now. Yeah. Because not only is the generation after the baby boomers not there, the generation after them, who would just now be entering into the consumer, they'd be buying, things that teenagers buy, they're not there. And their parents aren't there to buy houses and buy cars, and our economy is collapsing. because of it. And, you know, one of the first things you always hear when you hear these pro-aborts talking about defending abortion, oh, well, there's too many children in the world. We got to get rid of. The children are not the problem. It's older people. And if you look at this thing, you see, like you're talking about the top-down thing, it's just growing, and this is getting smaller as this gets bigger.
And it's going to go boom.
You know, Californians are blaming their medical crisis. They're having a meltdown there. They're blaming, oh, well, we're having to support the immigrants. Maybe they need to look.
Right. And see, well, here's another problem from the economic standpoint. If we've replaced all the killed, dead Americans who would have been here with these Hispanic workers, they don't generally go out and buy expensive houses and cars. They're sending this money back to Mexico. The second highest percentage of income in Mexico is money that comes back into it from the United States.
Right.
That's the second highest source of income in Mexico.
Their GDP is based on
so
money
they're not
sent from
spending
America.
that money like if those. So the people they replaced, it's even worse than just the fact that they replaced the dead Americans. The people they replaced would have spent money here that they can't spend here. And it's a scary thing. I want to encourage people. These guys have a website, demographicwinter.com, and I'd really encourage people to get this and look at it.